All right, so we are continuing Hold Nothing Back as we've been in for, I think, 3 weeks now. This is the fourth installment. And as you guys who have been here, been a part of it, know, we've been talking about this identity, this DNA, right? And the idea of holding nothing back and what it means to become that, to be that as an individual, to live into that, because that's who God is. And when we talk about holding nothing back, we say we do this because we recognize that God's nothing or held nothing back from us. Yeah. That God, has given us so much, so the only appropriate thing in response to that is to look for every opportunity to give of our finances, to give of our energy, to give of our time, and to give of our resources back to Him. And so as we've kind of started this series, we started with week 1 talking about holding nothing back in the area of faith. And we talked about what it looks like as a big concept, as a principle, to live a life of faith that holds nothing back from God. And then we talked a couple weeks ago about finances and what it means to hold nothing back in the area of your finances. Last week we talked about energy. And then today we're talking about time. And the title of this talk, the title of this sermon is, It's About Time. It's about time. It could be said in a lot of different ways. It's about time as in like, man, I'm glad you showed up. You could say it's about time as in, man, I got things I got to get done. It's about time. Time is the one thing that all of us have kind of a level playing field. Doesn't matter how wealthy you are, doesn't matter what your upbringing is, it doesn't matter what your experience has been. Time is the one thing that you have, or that we all have, that's equal, or that it's kind of, on a fair playing field. Time, we all get 24 hours. We don't get more because you're better or a certain color, or because you have more wealth, or because you have something that was kind of entrusted to you. You don't get less for any of those same reasons. You just get what you get. It's 24 hours. And so it's the one thing that we, take for granted, but we value it at the same time, right? Like you can take time for granted and say, well, we can kind of slack off, take it easy, kind of ignore some things, forget about some things. Yet we also don't like it when someone takes our time for granted. Like, right? We don't, we can take it for granted, but when someone else takes my time for granted, there's a problem. I remember a few years ago, I was doing, or not a few years ago, not too long ago, I was putting together a proposal, like a business proposal for this company, this organization that they had requested. We had spent several kind of weeks dialoguing about possibilities, about what this could become. And so they were, requesting that I put together this proposal of like kind of the next 6 months. And it was kind of a trajectory of what could be, not just what had been building off of what was established, but what could be. And so it was, like, hey, here's the idea, here's what we're after, here's what we'd like to see. And so it was my responsibility to put together this proposal, and so I did. I spent the better part of a week putting together kind of a detailed proposal with timelines, dates, finances, staffing requirements, projected revenue, projected expenses, what targets would be hit by when, and literally like the better part of a week to put this thing together. I submit the proposal, I pitch it to them, sounds great. Couple days later, hear back from the same people who requested the proposal. Actually, we changed our mind. We're gonna like not do any of this. And I was like, wait, like, this is what you said you wanted, like in the weeks and months before, and then now, all of a sudden, like you don't want this. And it's fine because it's your organization, it's your operation, it's your company. You can determine or decide what you want. But what I don't appreciate is that I took a week to put this thing together, and then all of a sudden, at a moment's notice, I changed my mind. I had like bad food that day, and so I wasn't really thinking, and I just decided today I want to do something totally different. And it felt like my time was like completely disrespected, completely wasted, completely devalued. And we all know that feeling, don't we? I mean, it could be something as simple as going to a restaurant or to a bar or to a meetup or a movie or whatever, and the person that you're meeting there is always late. And so you leave early. You're ready, you're prepared, you woke up early, you decide, I can't trust the subways because it's New York, and no matter what they say, there's always an issue. And so I'm gonna leave 7 minutes early to make sure that I get like the first train there. And this person is always late, and they completely devalue or disrespect your time. And you're like, man, no matter what time it is, or no matter what situation it is, this person can't manage to be on time, and I'm always on time. Or maybe, you might have had this happen to you, where you've been in a meeting that's kind of run a little bit too long. I'm guilty of leading some of those meetings. Like I'm not a saint, and so I don't stand up here pretending to be that I've got this all together. But we've all been in a meeting or two where someone has kind of extended the meeting beyond the duration that was on that Google invite, and you're like, come on, man. Like, cut this thing short, let's land the plane, let's get this thing over with. And you're just sitting there at this meeting thinking, my time is wasted here. because it's gone beyond the duration, or because I wasn't supposed to be in this meeting to begin with, yet I got invited into it and I couldn't say no, and so I showed up, but someone didn't value my time because they didn't consider what's the value that I could bring to this conversation or to this meeting. And so you feel like time was wasted. But it's not just like someone running over on a meeting. It's not just someone like running late to an event or to a meetup. It's also the extensive commitment to time, right? Like what I shared, that example of putting together this proposal where we feel like our time can be devalued or disrespected, where you've committed to something for an extended duration of time, where you've been a part of something for so long, and it feels like it means nothing to them. Maybe it's at a work situation where you've been at this company for X amount of years, or you've been committed to this project for X amount of months, and then at the end of it, you turn it in, or at the end of it, you realize, like, you know what, to this person, to this boss, to this employer, to this company, it really doesn't matter that much how much I've been here, or how long I've been here, or how much I've committed, or how much time this thing took. They just take it and they say, okay, good job, thank you, appreciate it. Like, whoa, like, I mean, I get the great job, I appreciate it, I get this is my job, but do you recognize this took a long time? Yeah. Or if I'm asking for a raise, like I'm asking because I've been here for 4 years, getting underpaid for 3.95 of those years, and so, me asking for a raise is not being rude, me just saying, it's like, hey, I think I deserve like something, and they're like, well, maybe next year's evals we'll decide about a pay raise. Or, more personal, more intimate, is in relationships, right? You get involved in a relationship, or maybe you've seen this with your parents or with your family members, where someone has been committed in a long relationship, and then all of a sudden they're separating, or all of a sudden they're getting divorced, or all of a sudden, the relationship is coming to an end, and you can't help but think like, wait, you've been married 30 years, or you've been married 10 years. Like, you're going to throw this away over that, like that quick? You're just going to let go of it like that? And what you realize is that someone or both people aren't committed to the time. And so they end up devaluing or disrespecting each other's time. And so we have those situations, we have those moments, we have those experiences, not only that we're familiar with, but that we've been on the receiving end of, or that we've experienced in our own personal lives, through work or through relationships or through family. And all of those things have taught us one thing. All of those experiences, all of those circumstances have taught us that it's in our best interest to hold back our time. They've convinced us that we should believe, you know what, I'm not going to give of my time to this because it's not going to be valued. I've felt that experience before. I know what it feels like when someone doesn't treasure what I offer, and so I'm going to hold back. Or maybe more personal, we think my time is more valuable or more important than their time. And so I don't want to commit my time to them. I don't want to offer my time to them because, yeah, they might have worked here as long as I have. I might have known them, or we might have grown up together, or we might have been in this relationship for X amount of time, or I could take more time to do this, but at the end of the day, my time is more valuable than their time. And it's weird, mathematically it doesn't add up, but somehow we live in a city where 9 million people believe that's true for them. Like 9 million people here believe my time is more valuable than everyone else's time. Statistically, it's impossible for that to be true. But functionally, operationally, that's how we live. It's why we hurry past people. It's why we're willing to blow someone by with the shoulder in the subway if they're walking too slow or coming down the upstairs. We've done all this stuff. Because we think my time is more important than their time. What I have on my agenda, what I have on my plate is more significant than what they have on their plate or what they have on their agenda. And so why would I give them more of what's important to me if they don't cherish it, if they don't value it, if they don't utilize it? And listen, New York City is a complicated place, and if you're watching online, trust us when we say this, it really is. It's a complicated place. And it may be, this might be true elsewhere, but I know for sure time is probably the one thing that's more valuable than money in this city. Time is the one commodity, the one asset that everyone in this city, because if you have more time, you can make more money. But if you have more money, you can't make more time. And so it's the one thing that we feel like, yeah, this is important. I don't want it wasted. I don't want it misused. And honestly, as a type A personality, I get it. I appreciate it. And I value it because I love maximizing my time. I love, making the most of my time and using it to see things get accomplished, to see things get done, to see things move forward. I love leveraging my time. And I also, on the flip side of that, hate when my time is wasted. And I hate when I feel like my time wasn't considered. And I hate when I feel like, not too long ago, a guy that reached out to me that I knew from a while back. And we were supposed to get together, and so we scheduled something. I, worked around his schedule and his calendar, and then, we were planning to meet up. So about an hour before we were supposed to meet up, I just shot him a text like, "Hey, where are we meeting? Is this the right spot?" And he texts me back. He says, "Oh, bro, I'm really tired. Can we meet up another time?" I text him back, "No, I'm good." Like, I'm not wasting my time. An hour before we were supposed to meet up, you're like, "Oh, I'm tired." I'm like, "But you didn't even text me that. You were tired this morning when you woke up. We were meeting in the afternoon. You could have texted me. You could have told me. I just don't like my time being wasted." You know what I mean? Because I realize that time, for me it's not returned, nor is it returned for you. In fact, here's what we know. All of us know this. Time is either leveraged or lost. Whoops, out of order. But time is either leveraged or lost. We'll get to this in a second. You don't get it back. No one's going to return to you the time. So it's either going to be lost or you're going to leverage it for something greater, for something more significant. And when we miss that or when we lose sight of that, we kind of operate in a haphazard way. But while that's a true principle or while that's a true statement, that can also be misapplied or misused, and it can also be used to leverage for selfish motivation and selfish purposes. And the truth is, even though New York is this complicated place, and even though all of these things are true in New York City, the fact of the matter is this feeling or this sentiment around time isn't new or unique to us. I mean, it's not something that was original to New Yorkers. It's not something that's unique to New Yorkers, because other people around the world feel the same way. Other Christians experience the same things. And this is a problem that we can see or we can trace all the way back to Jesus' day, even within his own disciples. And in Mark chapter 6, where we'll read in just a moment, you see this same thing taking place. Jesus has just sent his 12 disciples out to go out and do a bunch of ministries, their first kind of ministry gig, their first ministry tour, where they're going to go out, they're going to heal the sick, they're going to cast out demons, they're going to care for the poor, they're going to help those in need, they're going to preach the gospel, they're going to do all these epic things. And so they go out and they do their thing, they come back, there's dozens of them that go out, they come back, they gather back with Jesus, and they're like, "Hey, Jesus, let's tell you about everything that happened, everything that went on." Jesus like, "Great, good, let's jump in the boat, we get to the other side of the lake, and then over there we can kind of hang out and catch up." So they make their way around the boat, or around the lake, and when they get to the other side of the lake, it doesn't say how many, but eventually it ended up becoming thousands of people who were there waiting for Jesus and his disciples to arrive, waiting for them to come. And Jesus, it says, was moved with compassion on these people. And he began teaching, he began kind of sharing the hope of the gospel with these crowds who were desperate for something. Desperate for a miracle, desperate for hope, desperate just to hear and kind of connect with what Jesus had to offer. And so this whole idea of leisurely connecting, leisurely hanging out is kind of pressed pause or put on hold. And that's where we pick up here in Mark chapter 6. It says, now notice the language, late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him, to Jesus, and they said, "This is a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so that they can go to the nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat." But Jesus said this, "You feed them." With what, they asked? Notice how they respond. "We'd have to work for months. We'd have to give more time. We'd have to put in more effort. We'd have to commit more dedication, more time that we don't have, Jesus, to earn enough money to buy food for all these people." Jesus responds, "How much bread do you have? Go and find out." And they came back and reported, "We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." Of course, in this story, it says that Jesus goes back and he takes those 2 fish and those 5 pieces of bread and he turns it into the miraculous and feeds over 5,000 people. It says 5,000 men and their families. And so it's an incredible, epic story of what Jesus did, but what we lose sight of in this is how the disciples felt. is how the disciples acted. It's what they communicated when it came to time. And what's startling to me, or what's shocking to me about this scripture, is that it reveals that we can let our views, our cultural understanding, or our cultural values of time infect and permeate our faith. And so if our views of time, if our understanding of time is unhealthy or selfish or irresponsible, those things are going to work their way into faith. In fact, faith is not separated from time. Faith doesn't operate on its own apart from time. Of course, it operates within time. But our views of time and our values that we place on time are going to affect how we live our faith. And so what I value over here, the way I treat time, the way I'm motivated by my time, the way I leverage my time or don't leverage my time, inevitably will reveal itself in how I live and pursue my relationship with Jesus over here. And in this, you find that the disciples are kind of in this situation where time, their values of time, could have or would have restricted them from doing something that ended up becoming miraculous. And listen, it's not just like easy to point the finger at the disciples and say, oh man, they were like guilty as charged. You know, they were so poor in this, because we fall prey to this as well. Yeah. Our lives, our experiences, how many times have we thought, well, I don't have time to stop and have a conversation with this person. I know they're in need. I know they're struggling. I know they need help. I know like they're worried. I know they're concerned. I can tell that they're broken. And maybe God is stirring in your heart to just stop and have a conversation, or say, hey, do you need someone to talk to? Or hey, is there something I can do? And we say, no, you know what? Like I really got to catch that subway because I can't afford to be late to this thing that doesn't require a schedule or an agenda. Or how many times has it come across your plate an opportunity to love someone, to go the extra mile, to do a little bit more? And we think to ourselves, we wouldn't say this out loud, but we think to ourselves, that's good enough. They'll appreciate this. Yeah, I mean, this is good, right? And we get someone else in for validation, knowing that if we did a little more, if we committed a little more time, if we were a little bit more thoughtful, it wouldn't just be good enough, but it would be exceptional in their lives and transformative in their walk. We fall prey, and listen, I'm preaching to the choir because this same thing has happened to me. I mean, as recent as a few years ago, I was involved in working at a church, was part of a ministry where it was a high demanding role, a lot of work, a lot of responsibility, administrative tasks, oversight of staff, leadership stuff, speaking, preaching, teaching, management of different ministries, all of these different things. And from the outside looking in, I'm living the high life, doing a lot of great things while this guy's on top of his game. He's killing it, he's crushing it. And so I was doing all the things the disciples were doing. I was out on the ministry tour. I was celebrating, look at this happening, this taking place, these baptisms, these salvations, these responses, this transformation, this change, these people plugging in to our church, these people growing in their faith, all these exceptional things. And then one day, Krista gets a text message from a lady, from a couple that we knew. Not just a couple we knew, a couple that we were friends with, a couple that we were responsible for pastoring. And this couple was within a month or a few weeks of their wedding date. And the soon-to-be wife reached out to Krista and shared with her that she had just found out her soon-to-be husband had an affair. And not just like an affair, but years ago or whatever, but literally right up until the moment before he proposed to her. Like any woman, like any human being, she was distraught. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know like where to turn. She couldn't understand or comprehend, what's happening. Should I cancel the wedding or is it off? Like how do we, this was months ago and I'm just finding out now and we're supposed to get married. Invites have been sent. Arrangements have been made. People are planning to come. What do I do? Who do I talk to? So she did what any person in that situation would do. You talk to the one person that you think you can trust, the one person you think is going to be able to help. So she reaches out to my wife and says, is there any chance that you guys can connect with us to meet up? So Krista reaches out to me and says, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. When would be a good time for us to get together with them? And my response was, I don't have time. Because that meeting couldn't be rescheduled. Because that sermon couldn't be pushed back a week. Because that other situation where I was doing ministry was too important. Because the tasks needed to get done and they couldn't be delegated. And I was too busy to love or serve or connect and minister to a couple in a moment of crisis. And you know how I justified it? I justified it by saying a crisis on their end doesn't constitute a crisis on my end. In general, that might be a good principle to live by. But in this crisis, it wasn't. It's not that black and white. And I remember shortly thereafter, I don't know how long, I don't know if it was within a week, I don't know if it was, a month later or however long it was, but at some point, God brought that thing back to me, to the forefront of my mind and in my heart, and said, this isn't who I called you to be. And if this is who you're going to be, just get out. Just get out. Because your time is not your time, it's mine. I'm the one that breathed life into you. I'm the one that spoke you into existence. I'm the one that arranged for you to be connected to these people so that you could give of your time, but instead you've chosen to hold back that time. So when I read this story, I don't look at the disciples and kind of point a finger and say, oh, well, look at what they were doing. I read this story and I say, yeah, I've done that. Jesus, I know what that's like to have that attitude. I know what that's like to say, come on, Jesus, it's getting late. We got to go. People are hungry. They're complaining. You got to get them out. We got to send them out because, listen, God, if we give more time, it's gonna disrupt the flow. Plus, I've already done a bunch of good stuff. I've already been out on ministry. I've been helping people. I've done my part. I've given my time. And the disciples made this the same excuse, but I love that this wasn't good enough for Jesus. I love that excuse wasn't going to satisfy their need. I love that he wasn't going to let them escape the commitment. I love that he wasn't going to challenge them or that he wasn't going to give them an out away from the challenge. But instead he pressed back in and he said, how much bread do you have? He said, go and find out. In other words, stop complaining about the time and put in more time. Now listen, because you can hear that and you can think about a boss who's manipulated your time. You can hear that and you can think about a teacher who told you didn't put enough time into a project. You can hear that and then think about a parent who told you don't spend enough time talking to me on the phone, or you don't call me enough, or you don't spend time with your family enough. But that's not what Jesus was saying. Jesus wasn't manipulating a situation and leveraging it for his selfish gain. He was heart checking. He was gut checking. He's saying your motives are selfish. You're holding something back. You want the praise, but not the process. You want the recognition, but not the journey. You want all these things, but your motives are false. And they're not right. So he says, go and find out. Go and find out. And so we're not told that the disciples complained. We don't see any words of like griping or like mumbling under their breath. Instead, they committed to time. And they went through the crowd, the thousands of people, kind of rummaging through the crowd, looking for food one by one, checking, asking, figuring out what happened or who has what. And listen, we talk about the miracle. Wow, he took 5 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of fish and multiplied it and fed thousands. And it really is exceptional. It's phenomenal. But the disciples, imagine being in their situation. You go through the crowd, you take more time, and you go through these thousands of people, and all you're able to turn up. Of thousands of people, only one person had food. The thousands of people, a little kid is the only one that thought about bringing a sack lunch. And if I were the disciples, given their already stated and clearly defined attitude, I would have thought, man, this is wasted time, Jesus. Go and find out. We went through and we found out, but this is all we got. Like, we could have been sent them out, Jesus. They could have been got food. We didn't have to do any of this. We wasted our time. Imagine being them, going through the crowd. Hey, do you have any food? No, you don't? Okay. Hey, miss, do you have any food? No. Hey, you have any food? Sorry to bother you. Nothing? Okay. You have kids. Like, you have any food? you don't have, like, fruit snacks? Like, no gummy bears? I mean, like, you got kids. You got to have snacks, right? Nothing? Good God, how many people have nothing? Like, where did you guys come from? Who raised you? Did you not prepare for this? No after no after no, thousands of times multiplied over, to find one yes. And at the end, feel like, what a wasted effort. How do we waste so much time doing this? You're supposed to be God. You should have known nobody had food. But don't miss this. What they found or what they discovered was all they needed. Wow. And that one offering was all Jesus needed to, that little bit of discovery was all Jesus needed to multiply and bless the multitudes. They thought it was wasted time. They thought it was wasted effort. They thought we just spent however many hours, 12 of us, going through tens of thousands of people and coming up with 5 pieces of bread. And Jesus said, give it to me. That's all I need. That's all I need. And because they connected with the crowd, one person at a time, they were able to serve the miracle for thousands of people at one time. Yeah. Did you get that? Because they connected with the crowd, one person at a time, they were able to provide a miracle for thousands of people at one time. That's so good. You see, those paths that they walked that were fruitless, the kind of trails they walked through the crowds to navigate, to get to the food, those things they thought were wasting their time became the same paths that they would walk to distribute the miracles. Right. Yeah. And so they're walking through the crowd thinking, what a waste of time. Why am I doing this? This is stupid. Nobody has food. Can we just give up already? And Jesus says, no, you've got to walk through that. You've got to create those paths because those are going to be the very paths that you get to distribute the miracles for the people in need. That's good. And so what felt like was wasted time was actually Jesus allowing them to go first to create the path so that the time could actually be redeemed and maximized and multiplied. Yeah. So good. But it was because Jesus didn't let them hold back their time. And herein lies kind of the crux of this message. The miracles we want are often on the other side of the time we commit. Yeah. The miracles you want in your life are often on the other side of the time that you commit. The miracles we want as a church on the other side of the time that we commit. The people we want to reach, they're on the other side of the time that we invest in relationships. Because we can do Facebook ads, we can do mass marketing, we can do promotions, all of that stuff. But you know who the people are going to be transformed? It's going to be the people that we know through relationship by caring for them. Yeah. The people that, the transformation we want to see, it's going to be on the other side of the time we commit in prayer. We can't just sit here and say, God, change people, and we'll just let you do that, but we're not going to invest and sow into it in prayer. And we're not going to sow into it in time. And we're not going to commit to it, but God, you just do what you're supposed to do, and we won't do any of it. The love we want people to feel, it's on the other side of the time we commit to serving them. And I'm not just talking about inside of a church building or a church event. I'm talking about in the streets, in the workspaces, in the buildings that we live in the conversations we connect with, whether it's with a bus driver or with someone on a cashier. It's all of that. The love we want people to feel is going to be on the other side of the time we commit to serving them. And to recognizing who they are, to sowing into that relationship, to building that bridge, to loving and creating, there's a gap that's been created, but creating the bridge that crosses that gap. And saying, God, I'm not going to hold back because I'm in a rush. I'm not going to hold back because I'm too busy. I'm not going to hold back because I don't have time. But God, you held nothing back. And so when you press into me to hold nothing back, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to give the extra time because I know the miracle that we want to see, the miracle that we want to experience as a church community is on the other side of the time that I commit to it. And I believe this is true for you personally, not just for us as a church, not just for us as a community, but I believe this is true for you personally as well. Whatever miracle you're lacking, whatever need you have, whatever thing you're desperate for, whatever situation is a challenge, I believe the answer or the miracle is on the other side of that. That I believe when you commit to prayer with God, when you commit to your relationship with Him, when you commit to loving other people, when you commit to serving them, that God takes that and you say, man, God, this is wasted. It feels like nothing is happening. And God is saying, no, you've just created the stream. You've just created the path where now the miracle can flow. And so my question, kind of the thing that I'll leave you with this morning is this. Where do you need to commit more time to God? If the idea is that we hold nothing back, because again, remember, this is an identity. This is not a function of a church. So if the idea is that we're holding nothing back from God, it could be connected to our church. But my hope and my prayer is that it's bigger than that. My hope and my prayer is that it's more personal than that. Because if you choose to hold nothing back from God in this area between your relationship with Him, then it'll overflow into what we do as a community. Right. Yeah. So is it in prayer? Is it in spending time, talking and communing with God or reading His Word? Is it through, healthy community and friendships? Is it through relationships? Is it through serving people in need? What is it or where is it that you say, you know what, God, I've been holding back from you in this area, but now it's time to release. Now it's time to let go. And yeah, I can brag about what I've done in the past. I can celebrate. I can high-five my buddies and say, look, we did all these incredible things. But when Jesus says, hey, let's cross that lake, I'm saying, yeah, Jesus, I'm going with you. Because I want to be a part of the miracle. I want to be a part of distributing the miracle. I want to be a part of the one who touches the pieces of bread, who touches the pieces of fish, and make sure that everyone has what they need. But you don't get to experience that if you hold back your time.